Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Seth.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
We are.
Ah, yes. Still classic, still gaming, and still brothers.
We are those three things and more if you think about it.
We're more? How can we be more than classic gaming and brothers?
You just have to think about it.
I
don't know. I got nothing actually.
For
a little pull off the curtain of production, Seth and I are experimenting with video chat. So it's the first time we see each other while recording. It's for very interesting content, I will say.
Also, the first time we've seen each other
ever. We've never met. It's not even my brother.
We're big phonies. We're not actually brothers.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So going from recently played, Seth, what have you been recently playing?
So going back to one of our beginning episodes, I think I actually mentioned this game, I think episode 2 or 3 or something like that. I can reference our notes, but it's a game called Planet Zoo. It is a tycoon game where you manage a zoo. So it's very much similar to Zoo Tycoon. Mm-hmm. And the game is done by the same people who did Planet Coaster, who are also the same people who did Elite Dangerous, which is the Frontier Studios company.
Yeah, okay, I remember them.
They're very good at making a very good game, and they're also very good at continually patching and supporting the game post-launch. So there's always new content coming in for all their games, which is cool. They even Planet Zoo already has an expansion pack. They have an Arctic, so you can do snow creatures in your zoos. It's a pretty detailed management game. You end up you have a zoo. It's done in the same style as Planet Coaster, which is very 3D. You can zoom in and around. There's even animal cams, so you can go in and watch a specific animal go about in their day and seeing what they're playing with toys and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
And they had specific challenges that you need to reach. So you need to make sure that the animal cages are they have fresh stuff that they're working in. They have new toys because they get tired of toys. That you're you have to rescue or buy animals, which is actually not how it works in the real world. Just in case anyone ever wants to know how zoos actually work. This is not a zoo podcast, but you can't actually buy another animal from another zoo. Zoos can't buy from other zoos because that implies a illegal trading of animals kind of deal. So
I get you. Okay.
So zoos end up actually just trading zoo animals with each other, which is why you'll see animals are on loan from other zoos. And in fact, they will spend money on transporting the animal because it costs a lot of money to transport an animal. So a zoo may spend $70,000 to $100,000 on acquiring an elephant, but that's all in just transporting that elephant from the zoo in Nova Scotia to Washington, D.C. In case you ever wondered how zoos actually worked, in Planet Zoo you can just buy these animal outright, or you can rescue them. And you have to make sure that the habitats are decently the right temperature, the right environment, the terrain is painted the right way. And overall it's just it's a fun strategy game. I'm probably about 3 or 4 hours in and have been kind of enjoying the tutorial and trying to learn the game. It's got a pretty deep tutorial, so I'm still just ending that and getting into starting fresh with building my own zoo, which will be pretty exciting. It's been a fun game, and I'm glad I did wait on it, and I did pick it up for 25% off. So sometimes it's always good to wait because you save a couple of bucks.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So what have you recently been playing, Zach?
Well, so I've recently been playing the first Bioshock, but I've actually been playing through the remastered version. So the remastered version runs at a full 1080p resolution with 60 frames per second. And I have that on the PS4. So the reason I've been recently playing it is I have a PS Plus account, and every month PS Plus is very kind, and they give you usually 2 games for free.
It's not free if you pay for PS Plus.
That's true. Well, 2 games for PS Plus that they give to you, and usually they're games that are from the back catalog of the PS4. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're not either. But this month was Bioshock, and that was nice. I like Bioshock.
What was the other game did you get?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think it was good. I don't remember what it was.
Sonic Forces.
Sonic Forces actually was either this month or last month, but I already own it because I bought it like a dummy. So yeah, so I've been playing through the first Bioshock. I haven't played it in a while. I'm a big fan of the Bioshock games. I'm a big fan of that style of game. You know, the whole Shock series. I like games like Prey, and System Shock 2, Soma, and the creative direction that Ken Levine brings to the game. I think it's a good game. It's fun. It's probably something that I feel like we could do an entire episode on, talking about just the first Bioshock. It has tons of stuff to it, and at this point, it feels like it could be a classic game.
Sure, it's been remastered. Isn't that part of being a classic game if you get remastered?
Yeah. If you get remastered. And so the version I get is the collection. So that also has Bioshock 2, Bioshock Infinite, and all of the DLC, such as Minerva's Den for Bioshock 2, and Burial at Sea for Infinite, which is nice. It's good to have all that DLC kind of in one place. You don't have to worry about pulling it from other sources.
Right.
But it also is going to give me a chance to finally replay through Bioshock 2, or finally play through Bioshock 2. I started it on my computer, but I ran into some technical issues, and then I kind of fell off of it. So I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
Don't you play as a Big Daddy in Bioshock 2?
You do play as a Big Daddy. I have mixed feelings about what I played through Bioshock 2, but I never completed the game, so I don't feel like I have a solid opinion.
Yeah, I beat a majority of Bioshock. I got to about 80% of the game, and then somebody saved over my save game file on somebody's Xbox, and I still have to get around to beating
shall
it.
Not be named.
Who shall not be named. I did play a little bit of Bioshock 2, and I played a little bit of Infinite, probably a couple hours of each. And I remember Bioshock 2 was interesting because of playing from the Big Daddy perspective, which
they get the drill arm.
Yeah, the drill arm. The Big Daddies are they're a really interesting and kind of haunting aspect of Bioshock, and we could do an entire episode, so we shouldn't go too deep into the Bioshock franchise, as it were. But the whole atom, the power source of your ability, and how you go through, and the whole how you interact with the little sisters and the Big Daddies, just makes it such a interesting and very compelling story. And now talking about it, I kind of want to boot it up and play it. But
I've had it.
Yeah,
I think if you had an original copy on Steam, they might have given you the remastered version.
Yeah, I have the remastered collection.
Yeah, for free. So, that's what I've been playing, and as such, we are going to do an awkward segue.
No, it's not that awkward. This game has also been remastered.
That's true. This game, it's been re-released.
Not yet.
The third one got remastered. They haven't gotten to the first one yet, because they start backwards.
They always start backwards. In our last episode, we talked about just one game. We kind of stuck with just talking about Doom. So we're going to kind of keep that pattern going for a little while, just to see how you guys like it. And if you guys like these deep dives into one episodes, maybe we'll journey into some really wacky stuff, and also be able to kind of, Zach's waving his hands because we're on video, so now we can do hand motions to each other. It's hilarious. And so with that, we're gonna do another deep dive on one game, and we're gonna stick to the one game type of setup for a little while, just to see how you guys like it. And then we maybe go back to our old format a little bit. But the middle segment now is going to be set up so that we first will talk about our memories of the game, and then we'll go into the history and the background of the game, and then we'll finally wrap it up with the gameplay of the game. And that will lead us into the buy, wait, pass segment, because we always break up our segments by threes because that's how we work.
We are a trinity.
A trinity of two people equals.
Yeah, we are the classic gaming brothers trinity.
Trinity, right? So the game that I don't know if we even mentioned the game that we're talking about. The game that we're going to be talking about is Warcraft.
That's right. If you follow the Twitter, I did say that we would be talking about real-time strategy games.
That's true. That's true.
So I always hold a promise.
Yes, and if you read the description of our episode, you'll know what we're talking about 12 minutes before we do.
It's amazing. It's like time travel.
It is like time travel.
Last time when we talked about Doom, I think I talked about my memories first. Why don't you give me your memories of Warcraft?
So I can't not mention memories of Warcraft without talking about our father. Our father introduced us to Warcraft. He introduced myself to Warcraft. He introduced Zach to Warcraft. He is a Warcraft master. And is very good at the original Warcraft Orcs versus Humans. The original Orcs versus Humans Warcraft game was such a take on the RTS genre. There were RTS genres that were around earlier, but they were definitely not a lot when Warcraft came out. And when they came out and they hit it hard. And they really made a kind of like a buzzy, faster-paced RTS game where you would be going about and playing as either humans or orcs. And my father, I think he always played as humans generally. And so he was good. He was able to beat levels that I wasn't able to beat, mostly because I was a child and he was an adult. But I always put it up that he was very good at the game. And so he was able to really, there was levels that I'd be like, how do you beat this? Or I'd try to think of a weird strategy, and he would just beat it, be able to figure it out and play the game. And so I always, when I can't not think of Warcraft without thinking of Dad, which is always good.
I mean, same here. I mean, Dad was the one who introduced me to games like chess and stuff like that. So I think our father has a very strategy mind when it comes to games, or preference at least for strategy when it comes to games. I know my memories with Warcraft are actually the fact that I think Warcraft is one of the first computer games that I played. So the first video game I played was most likely Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Sega Genesis.
Right.
But the first computer game I really remember playing is I remember sitting in front of the big monitor of our Packard 486 with the black screen for DOS, typing in the command prompt, C:, CD, / Warcraft, pressing enter, pressing start, and then starting the game. And the thing I remember always so clearly, and the thing that always brings back so much nostalgia for me, is when you start, and I'll probably actually put it as the opening sound to this episode, but when you start a Blizzard game from that time period, you got the logo fade in to this like whooshing sound of a Blizzard, and it's just such a nostalgic, pixely sounding sound. It was never a perfect sound because our sound card wasn't great. Though right. According to the Warcraft installation, your sound card works perfectly. So, it was always that kind of build up to the game, and then once that Blizzard sound comes in, it goes right into the theme. This deep tone theme song to this game, and it really sets you onto a path of what I'd consider adventure.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it really played off on that the fantasy world of like J.R.R. Tolkien, and being able to tap into that, bring the fantasy world to life almost into the computer. And you had Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and you had you have books as well, of course.
Yeah.
But you didn't really have like a representation of like armies fighting themselves that resembled that of fantasy until you got to like Orcs and Humans. Like you didn't really have like you weren't able to play out like the army, which is the battle of the five armies, which you could almost kind of play that out. Not necessarily maybe in Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, but maybe the sequel, where they introduced more races and stuff like that into the game. But you could in fact like recreate these battles to a point, and I think that's probably also one of the reasons why Dad was so attracted to the game, specifically Warcraft, because he's a big Tolkien guy, and this game does do a very good job at not necessarily personifying Tolkien or bringing Tolkien forward, but really kind of backing up the fantasy world, but just like giving more credence to the fantasy world.
So going a bit into the history and background to Warcraft, Warcraft was developed by a company called Blizzard Entertainment. Currently, I believe they are known as Blizzard Activision, or they might have... I think, isn't that their name?
Well, they merged with Activision.
Blizzard.
Yeah.
They did merge with Activision in the early 2000s. In any case, Blizzard initially formed as a company called Silicon and Synapse back in 1991. And in 1993, they changed their name to Chaos Studios Incorporated. Then they were purchased by Davidson and Associates, and they changed their name to Blizzard Entertainment. So in the course of about 4 years, they had many different names.
But Warcraft Orcs and Humans was their first really big launch, and they were decidedly Blizzard when they launched it.
That's right. They had two games pretty much, they had a couple games under their belt. Two in particular were released on different systems. Rock and Roll Racing was on the Super Nintendo, and I think it was also on the PC. No, it was on the Sega Genesis. And then the Lost Vikings, which actually a lot of the artwork from the Lost Vikings later became inspiration for the artwork that got used in Warcraft. So during this early period of the 90s, real-time strategy games were around, but like Seth was saying, that there weren't a ton of them, but they were around, and they were a known genre. So particularly, Westwood Studios had created a game called Dune 2, based on the book Dune by Frank Herbert, and that's spelled Dune, not to be confused with Doom, our previous episode, which was one of the not the first, but one of the earlier real-time strategy games that kind of utilized a lot of the mechanics that would later go on to be used in Warcraft. There was another game that was released on the Sega Genesis, actually, called Hershog Sway, created by a Japanese company called Technosoft, which was also an inspiration for Blizzard. What Blizzard noticed was that during this time of the 1990s, and between 93 and 94, there was kind of a lull in real-time strategy games. They weren't being released as frequently as they felt like they were, and Blizzard decided that this was the time to strike, and what they could do is at the end of 94 and into 95, they were going to make their strike with Warcraft Orcs and Humans, the first game in this franchise that they were developing. What they didn't realize was at this exact same time, Westwood was working quietly on a little known game called Command & Conquer, which they were keeping hush-hush. So when Warcraft was released, Command & Conquer was quickly following it. So it kind of started this little feud that lasted for a bit between Westwood Studios and Blizzard. Nothing like, it wasn't like a Sega Nintendo feud, but it was one of those things where people, it was, if you were a real-time strategy fan, you're either a Westwood fan or a Blizzard fan, that sort of deal. Blizzard
helped, and Westwood with the follow with Command & Conquer, they took a niche genre of games. You're a very particular person if you're playing Dune, the real-time strategy game.
Yes, yeah.
You have to like Dune, and you have to like real-time strategy games. But you could play Warcraft, Orcs, and Humans, and not really need to have that institutional love of Dune to try and take a risk on a game. You play Orcs and Humans because it's a critically acclaimed game, and then you have Command & Conquer, and Command & Conquer and Warcraft or Orcs and Humans defined RTS for that era, and people were just, you have competitions in esports about StarCraft, like this.
Oh yeah,
Like
which
StarCraft,
yeah.
Warcraft 3 had a huge following and custom stuff and all that. Like I think there's still
and
competitions
Dota,
which came from custom maps in Warcraft. So you have this huge explosion from originally this spark back in 94, 95 with a game company that was essentially like kind of crazy when it came to ad hoc and kind of impromptu, to the point where Zach and I were reading some like mental floss articles, and they said that people within the company said that the script that was, they didn't have a script to the game until the game was in production and they were on their way.
Yeah.
And a lot of the dialogue that is like iconic dialogue for the game was just made up on the spot when they were going through it. Like, so, and that's how Blizzard operated. Like, Blizzard as a company just kind of just throws stuff on the wall and just moves quickly and is impromptu. And that's kind of where, and they made something that stuck, which is Warcraft. Definitely stuck.
And going along with that, I mean, if you look at some of their early notes on Warcraft, originally the intention was that Warcraft was going to be this, not necessarily a franchise, but a brand. It wasn't going to be the Warcraft series, it was going to be Warcraft games. So the idea was that you'd have the first game, which became Warcraft Orcs and Humans, and then you would have further branded Warcraft games, which would have followed the same kind of structure. One of them that was apparently proposed at the time was, of all games, Warcraft Vietnam, which, if you know anything about current Warcraft, sounds ridiculous,
right?
Because you picture orcs and humans, and then you picture them in Vietnam.
Yeah.
But at the time, this was just what their branding was planned to be, and the idea was that one of the executives at Blizzard thought it would be so brilliant to walk into a game store and see boxes and boxes of different games, all with this one brand, Warcraft.
Right.
And they thought that would be how you get this market. What they didn't realize was that the first game was going to be such a success as alone that they didn't even have to worry about creating this brand, and they already created a franchise.
Right.
So
which is interesting though, thinking about that Warcraft branding, because there's a company called DICE, which is owned by EA, created a game called Battlefield. And the Battlefield series has Battlefield 1942, Battlefield Vietnam, Battlefield whatever modern day stuff.
Yeah. They had like a future one back in the 2000s.
Yeah, I think they're just now Battlefield 1, Battlefield 2 now. But that, I think, is kind of what Warcraft kind of was aspiring to even before Battlefield came out and was a thing. But Zach is right, where they just created a franchise where they made Warcraft, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 2 expansion pack, Warcraft 3, and just kept moving out with Warcraft games. Though they did make StarCraft, which is kind of using their branding term. And they moved in with the craft at the end to be able to extend the brand. So they now extended the brand over to a futuristic version and was able to do a future game with machine guns instead of swords, instead of Warcraft being all fantasy driven. And that played well for them because StarCraft also went on to be very successful.
Yeah, probably one of the most successful real-time strategy games of all time.
Right,
arguably.
Especially with all the esports and all of that.
And so Warcraft also had some interesting elements when it came to using local networks and stuff like that. Seth, do you want to? I think you had some notes on that.
Oh, sure, yeah. So Warcraft was there. So there were multiplayer games for the RTS genre. Warcraft, because of its speed, and the way that the game was developed and how it played, made it so that you really wanted to play multiplayer Warcraft. Like, that was kind of like the goal. So it wasn't necessarily like the story was good and the AI was okay, but it was really you playing multiplayer Warcraft which was the best. And that kept the game going. And really, which is humorous, a fun story, is that Patrick Wyatt with Blizzard said that while they were building the game that would be playable using modems or a local area network, the company didn't have any LAN. Like, the office didn't have a network. So when they would be collaborating with other artists and programmers, they would use a sneaker network where they would carry floppy disks back and forth between offices to integrate source code revisions and artwork. Yeah. So you got this game that's going to be played online, and is played online, and was very successful online. And there was no network for the company. So they would be like, save on a file of a picture of an art guy, or, like picture of a paladin, walk down the hall, give the picture of the paladin to another guy, and there he goes. And also in kind of in the same vein, there is Warhammer, which is by Games Workshop, and they have Warhammer, and they originally, Blizzard wanted to be a license for the Warhammer game. So they wanted to use that Warhammer game art and have the Warhammer branding and be an actual product of Games Workshop. Didn't end up working out for them. So instead, they just drew heavily on it in regards to what their creatures look like and what their orcs look like and all of that. And they draw heavily on it again for StarCraft. And it's so blended now, and Warcraft and Games Workshop, they're both so old and they've been around for so long that even today, people don't know who actually took from who. Like, right. Did Warhammer influence Warcraft, or did Warcraft influence Warhammer? The truth is that Warhammer influenced Warcraft, but it's been so long now that it's kind of one of those blended mysteries of the past, as it were.
So now jumping over to the actual gameplay of Warcraft. Warcraft is split into, at least the story mode of the game is split into two different segments. So you have the orc story and the human story. Both are about 12 missions long, meaning you get a total of 24 of these story missions. The game is what's called a real-time strategy. Seth and I talked about real-time strategy games. We talk about them a lot, but we specifically kind of defined this genre back in our second episode,
yes.
Our second official episode. In a real-time strategy, what you do is you make decisions while the enemy is also making these decisions, and there's no pause between your moves. So when you tell a character to move, you can actually tell multiple characters to move, and there's no wait time. You don't have to wait 5 seconds for the next set of movement orders. You're also not limited to the number of spaces you're allowed to move. You can really move wherever you want. This is unlike games like Civilization, which is what we would call a turn-based strategy, where you would take turns between your enemy and yourself. In the real-time strategy games, such as Warcraft, you gather resources through use of a peon or a peasant class of characters. They in Warcraft 1, they couldn't attack. They were the weakest of the characters. I don't even think they could be upgraded in terms of armor. Like, when you upgraded armor for everyone else, their armor wouldn't go up. And you would create these bases and armies that you would use to attack and destroy the enemy base. Usually you're given a mission such as completely decimate the enemy base. Some of the story mode missions were a little different. There was one or two where you were in like a cave and you had to go through with a limited number of characters and a hero character that you had to keep alive through the mission while you fought assorted villains like slimes and skeletons and demons and dudes
and Medivh.
and Medivh. Something cool, though, I think, about the Warcraft's gameplay, at least for the story mode, is that at least the first couple of missions really provide you with the gameplay mechanics. What I would say is, if you've never played Warcraft or a real-time strategy game, play the storyline, especially the orc storyline or the human story. Actually, the orc storyline, I think, is the one that they recommend you start with, because it is the first, usually like 5 or 6 missions are just them hand-holding you through the essential gameplay mechanics. So the first mission is you have to build 4 farms, create X number of characters, and get X amount of resources, and then it ends. And they kind of repeat this process of, build a mill, build a barracks, build this, and it kind of teaches you that you need these items. And then it starts giving you the more direct instruction of destroy the base, blah blah blah. And between each of these levels, they give you a little bit of story dialogue and such to kind of explain why you're doing this. In the human storyline, you're a regent who has just been appointed by King Lane Wyrn, who and you're being tasked with being the regent of this small section of this mythical land. And the sum of the story pretty much is that these orcs, which are these big green guys, they kind of look like the Incredible Hulk with horns, came from a planet alternate world called Draenor to this land called Azeroth, which is effectively Earth, but there are elves. And Azeroth is occupied primarily by humans, at least in the first game. That's who you meet, is the humans. And the orcs create a massive portal and they begin to invade. They attack human settlements and they conquer the land. And canonically, so if you look at Warcraft as a series 1 through 3, the canonical story is the orc story as the true narrative, which ends in the humans' demise. Which I always think is interesting, is that the humans aren't in the canon, the humans aren't the victors. The first war ends with the orcs taking over that part of Azeroth. Like I mentioned, there are a couple of hero characters. The main leader for the orcs is a character named Ogrim Doomhammer, which has a great name. There's an orcish spy named Garona Half-Orson. She's half orc, half human, hence her name, Half-Orson.
Yes, she's got a very unique last name there.
King Lane Wyrn, again, he's mentioned as the king of Azeroth, and there's a
Lothar
magician.
makes in...
Yes. And, Anduin Lothar, who is the great champion of the humans. He shows up in the second game too, and he dies. And then Medivh is the magician, who is kind of like a mysterious magician.
Yeah, Medivh is a fun character because he's kind of on his own side, and especially in the original Warcraft Orcs versus Human, he's kind of like his own faction. He's not playing with the orcs, he's not really against the humans. He's kind of against them both. He's just like summoning demons by himself. But they take this Medivh character and they just run with him throughout the whole series, and he shows up time and time again.
He's a central character to Warcraft 3.
Yes.
I mean, Warcraft 3 would not happen without Medivh.
Which,
and
for good or for bad.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they expanded him into the World of Warcraft, a massive multiplayer online role-playing game, MMORPG. I believe Medivh is actually a central character in some of the storylines in that as well.
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty positive that he is, which is impressive that the game, so you have like 4 Warcraft RTS games, 3 and an expansion, and then you have like an entire MMO world that's more I wouldn't say more popular than the RTS, but it's definitely got it's like, really, when you think like World of Warcraft then led to like a movie production of a video game. And
right, which is interesting because the movie actually ended up pulling more from the RTS. When they were, I'm a huge Warcraft fan, so I ended up watching the movie, and it was okay. But when I was reading about the production, they were originally planning to go with some of the World of Warcraft storylines and actually considered calling the movie World of Warcraft. And apparently at some point down the line, they're like, no, let's just do the original story. Orcs come to Azeroth. Lothar's there. Ganora's there. Medivh is the villain. It's like or he's not even a villain. He's like, again, he's this kind of weird middle ground character. He ends up being like a tertiary villain to the whole main, plot. But yeah, this little game that really, you would not expect to become as big as it did, ended up becoming one of the most, one of the biggest fantasy franchises in video games. I mean, to the point where it's been referenced constantly by other games, other media. I mean, there's a whole South Park episode that was created in the World of Warcraft game. So it's amazing that this little game from this little company who just wanted to make an impact was able to stand the test of time the way it did.
It's hard to think of Blizzard being anything what they are today. I mean, when you think of Blizzard, you think of Blizzard Activision. You may have positive feelings about Blizzard. You may have now negative feelings about Blizzard. You might have had positive feelings about Blizzard 10 years ago, but now you have negative feelings about Blizzard.
Yeah.
But back in 95, 94, they weren't anybody. They just were like, they weren't nobody. They were just a small little development company that wanted to put a game out, and the game that they put out was Warcraft. And it just took off. And it didn't just take off with World of Warcraft. It took off with Warcraft Orcs versus Humans. It took off with this game. And they were, I think, one of the things that they really tried to do is get a sequel out to Warcraft Orcs versus Human immediately. And then that's where like Warcraft 2 came out, and they just kept on moving along. And Warcraft 2, they expands the story. So, like, for example, in Warcraft 1, you were limited to selecting 9 units at a time.
Oh, less than that, 4.
4 units at a time. So you could select 4 units at a time, and you had a cap of like 50 total units or something like that. So you could make 50 units as your cap. You could select 4. You increased your cap. Well, you increased the capacity by building more farms, but there was still like a hard cap of like, I think, 50. And then, yeah, you could select 4. So then you're trying to move, like, you'd have hotkeys, so you'd group up enemies. So it wasn't like the StarCraft or Warcraft games today where you can just select, like, 40, 50 units at a clip and move them all in one unit.
Right. Yeah, it's actually, it's interesting because it makes you play the game differently than you would play a game like StarCraft or the later Warcraft 3 or something, where... because you can only select these 4 characters at a time, you kind of have to like, oh, you know, these characters are a little faster than these characters, so I need to make sure that they keep up a good pace so that they don't get wiped out when these characters finally arrive to the enemy base. You know, oh, I need to, you know, strategically position these people here so that I can make sure they get into the area first. You know, it gives you a lot more to think about, in my opinion, than when you have to select like when they give you the option to select like 50 and just send them all in at once. You know, it's a little more dramatic, a little more strategy in a way.
A little more strategy. I think it's also interesting that in Orcs versus Humans, it is true, in fact, Orcs versus Humans. Every human is a human on the human army. So like you have a human footman, you have a human archer, you have a human knight, you have a human mage, and you have a human cleric. And I don't know if I'm missing any other. Oh, and that's the catapult, which is just a catapult.
which doesn't have anyone driving it, apparently.
It's just a moving catapult.
According to the artwork in the game, it's just a sentient catapult.
And then, orcs, humans versus catapults. And then orcs were the same deal. You had an orc fighter, an orc spear thrower, an orc wolf rider, an orc cleric-ish type character, and an orc mage type character. Yeah. But when the sequels came through, they added more races. So then all of a sudden the archers were now all elves, and the dwarves came in to do like different aspects. So they definitely blew up the type of like the diversity of races in the second one. But in the first one, it's truly, when they say it's Warcraft Orcs versus Humans, it's truly just Orcs versus Humans and sentient catapults.
It's sentient catapults, yeah. I think the only thing that isn't an orc or human is that the mages can summon for a temporary amount of time what's called a water elemental, and I think the orc warlocks can summon a fire elemental.
Yes, and Medivh can summon both of them.
And Medivh can summon both of them, and then in the last mission you have to fight demons too.
There's also a demon.
There's just like a big red demon.
Yeah, but I think inspired by probably the Baylor from D&D.
I think so, yeah. I mean, there's so many references to fantasy and fantasy games and media, like D&D and Lord of the Rings. I mean, the final thing that you have to destroy as a human when you're playing the human campaign looks like the Mount Doom. It's called Black Rock Spire. It's the base of the orcs, and it's this just massive rock sitting out of the ground that looks like a Mount Doom, you know. But yeah, Warcraft is very, very fun. It's actually both Warcraft and Warcraft 2 are available as a bundle on Good Old Games, GOG, which Seth and I probably recommend that more than we do our own website.
Yeah. GOG or Warcraft?
No, GOG.
Oh yeah. I think I bought Warcraft or StarCraft. bought. I think it was StarCraft. I bought that game. I think like 5 times easily.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like I bought the battle chest at least 3 times by itself. But
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
they're
I think you can
StarCraft
actually-
and Warcraft
yeah.
they're very good. They're very they hold up the test of time, as it were.
Yeah.
Maybe StarCraft
Absolutely.
a little bit more than Warcraft, but StarCraft's also a newer game. So
Yeah, and if you want to get into real time strategies, and you might not want to have to deal with some of the clunkiness that, I mean, Warcraft 1 does have a little bit of clunkiness to it. If you don't want to deal with some of the clunkiness of the early Warcraft game, Warcraft 2 is also a great game. In my opinion, Warcraft 2 is everything they could have done with Warcraft 1, if not more. They had more resources to work with, so
Right.
they added like boats and stuff like that. And then StarCraft is even more so,
Yeah, exactly.
and you can get there's a remastered version of the original StarCraft available on
Blizzard.
battle.net, Blizzard's service.
The Blizzard launcher.
So yeah, I think I don't know about you, but I think that wraps up on Warcraft really nicely.
That's Warcraft, Orcs versus Human. So we're gonna move along to our Byway Path segment.
Yes, sir.
So Zach, what are you excited about buying, waiting, or passing on?
Yeah, so the game that I that kind of sparked my interest, and I feel like I've heard the name before, so I'm really hoping we didn't mention this earlier, which I don't think we did. But it's called Under a Porcelain Sun. So Under a Porcelain Sun is a game that is being developed by Studio Leo Mingus and published by the Irregular Corporation. It's a first-person, what is probably best defined as a walking simulator. By that I mean is you walk around and you look at things, and you interact with some things, but you mostly look at things.
Kind of like the game that Norman Reedus just did.
Yes,
Death
like Death
Stranding.
Stranding. Yeah, yes. So you do a lot of walking. The difference is that this game looks like you are walking around a like fever trip of a dream. It looks like you are walking around some bizarre landscape of like one of the screenshots I'm looking at are these massive towers built out of what looks like playing cards with giant noses, like human noses sticking out of them. And then another picture shows this like ocean of tiled water with these large like ziggurat towers climbing out of the sky, and a shark that is taller than the towers like flying over them in the air. It is a bizarre looking game. It is described as a experimental and a surreal game. And according to the description, it's a text-driven first-person adventure set in colonial India, and it tells the absurd adventure tale during the annexation of southern Malwa. So I guess it has some historical elements to it somehow. I think for context, I actually really like games that are experimental and surreal and what you might describe as avant-garde. For one thing, one game I really like is the Stanley Parable, which is a walking
It's a fun
adventure
game.
of sorts.
I love Stanley Parable.
Yeah, which is it pretty much is just a walking game, but it is very avant-garde. It has a lot of bizarre elements to it and a lot of meta references and stuff to it. This game might be a little too avant-garde for me. This might not be quite what I'm looking for in my bizarre niche that I need to fill. It's currently it doesn't have a planned release date. It says coming soon. It doesn't have a set amount that they're going to be charging for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on my wish list, but I think at the moment I'm going to be a pass on it. I feel like it's going to be one of those games that if I picked it up, I'd play it once and I'd either really like it or be very confused, and then I'd never touch it again. And that, it just might not be the kind of game that I want to play. It looks very cool, and I'm sure that the team working on it is putting a lot of effort into it. It looks like it. But I think I'm going to pass on it for now. Oh, again, I'm going to put it in my wish list just so I can at least keep track of it. So when I get an alert about when it's going to come out, how much it's going to be, I can maybe revise my idea of what my plan is. But my current thing is pass.
All right. So my byway pass is going to be a little less avant-garde and a little more back to the tycoon-y type style. It's a game called Good Company. It's a corporate machinery simulator. It's actually in early access right now, so if I felt so desired, I could install it and buy it for, it's 10% off, so $22. It's coming out on March 31st, which is in 12 days, not today. It's going to be in 21st. It will be already out. I like doing this. Apparently, I love doing this. This game came out a while ago, apparently. But I'm excited about it coming out and already being out. It's a tycoon management game where you are creating a robot manufacturing empire. And so you're making your robots, and you have to start from scratch, like your garage, and you have to grow your business, hire staff. You have to automate production lines, make sure that you invent new products, and you try to get as much profit as you can. And I like Factorio type games, like games where you're working on different like automating things, I don't even know what I'm saying here. Automating things and being able to kind of like streamline things and watching things work as they should kind of games. So I think this game looks like it's kind of like a little blend of like Game Dev Tycoon and Factorio, which intrigues me and is something that I have seen some people play the early access. It looks like it's similar to the two Planet games, the Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster, which I enjoy both of those games. So it's not stylized like them, though. It is a more like cartoony game dev style.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing in the artwork. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Game Dev Tycoon, except you're making robots. I think I'm gonna put it on a wait. Maybe look to purchase it either right at the end so I can get the pre-purchase bonus, or wait until it comes out and maybe goes on sale for like 20% off or something a little more deeper. So we'll put it down as a wait. It looks fun though.
Fun fact: it's being published by the same people that are publishing under Porcelain Sun.
Corporation. Look at that!
Yeah.
See, we didn't even plan that, but we themed our Byweight Pass to be the Irregular Corporation publisher house. Well, so that's gonna be it for today's podcast. There's a number of ways that you can listen to us, support us, and contact us. Zach, what would be a way to listen to us?
Well, a way you can listen to us is you can go onto any of the podcasting apps that are available to the general public. I'm talking about Spotify. I'm talking about CastBox. I'm talking about Stitcher. I'm talking about iTunes. And I'm talking about Google Music, I think, or whatever it's called that they do.
Both Google Music and Google Podcasts.
Google Music and Google Podcasts. You see, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all those podcasting apps, and they all have us on it. However, if for some reason you listen to some podcast application that we have never heard of, I'm talking about some obscure podcast application, and we're not on it, let us know. We'll try to get on it, and we'll be on it.
That's right.
That's my goal.
I think one of the only podcasting apps that we're not on is the NPR One app, and that's because we would have to convince NPR One that we are a radio.
Get on that, NPR.
A podcast, an appropriate podcast for them, which I think we are. So maybe we'll be on there eventually. But we're on like iHeartRadio too, and all those TuneIn Radio. I don't know.
We're on a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
You can support us by listening, subscribing, sharing, following, ringing bells, letting people know that you listen to this podcast. I understand we're at this time of recording, we're practicing social distancing. So for those who are far in the future and don't know what's going on, we are all trying to stay socially distant. Fortunately for you, because Classic Gaming Brothers are always socially distanced between ourselves.
Yes.
So we'll continue to produce content until the end, whatever the end may be. But we
knock on wood.
but with that being said, You can always write a letter to somebody and let them know about Classic Gaming Brothers. Send it to your friends. Write a letter. Have you ever written a letter to your friends? Have you written a letter about your friends to Classic Gaming Brothers? Because you can always do that. So you can grab a piece of paper and a pen and write out, listen to this podcast, and then mail it to somebody, and maybe they'll listen to it. If not, just you can come back and listen to us as we talk about different video games, generally classic. If you want to contact us, you can send us an email at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. You may also go to our website at classicgamingbrothers.com and just click contact us and fill out a form instead of writing an email. It's just like sending an email, except on a form. You may also follow us on Facebook at Classic Gaming Brothers, Instagram at Classic Gaming Brothers, and Twitter at CG Brothers Pod, which I blame on my brother for not getting the great name.
And I blame on Twitter.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I can still blame you. Our giveaway is still going on, so if you send us feedback, and if you listen to the Easter egg in the last episode, you could send us something else. We'll put you into the giveaway. Maybe we'll just send you some games. We'd always respond on social media, but in order to keep things streamlined, we do request that you email us if you so desire a video game.
Yes, yeah.
So with that said, I think, Zach, do you have anything else to add?
Zug Zug.
Zug Zug. That's good. That's good. That's what the orcs say in Warcraft. Anyway, I was giving you a chance to say, and remember, don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
Stop poking me.